On behalf of the Exceptional Family Resource Center, I'm pleased to welcome you to our Parenting Hacks presentation for December, which is thematically appropriate, and that is to introduce a longtime person that I admire, and I'm so delighted that he was willing to come and share all of his knowledge tonight. The topic is managing holiday stress, and I would say for one's child, but more importantly, for oneself. And so with us tonight is Christian Vinceneux, and he is a life coach, and he is here to share his wealth of expertise, wealth of information, and just his calm demeanor from years of knowing him. That was something that I really, really appreciated. And I want to just a couple housekeeping tips for those of us, for those that are live tonight, is if you do not want to be on camera, you can please go ahead and adjust your video in the lower left corner of your screen. We will be doing question and answer, but we will turn off the recording prior to that so that we can really offer people, confidentiality and privacy. But without further ado, please help me welcome Christian Vinceneux. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Morai, for this warm introduction. And yeah, it's been, I can't remember how many years it's been, but I want to say it's been what, at least 10 years or more? 10, 15? Wow, it's been a while. I didn't have any gray hair at the time. And really happy to be here and talking about trying to manage stress over the holidays. That's a lot of what I talk about in my work, not just during the holidays, but anytime I work with parents who are stressed and parents who are anxious, and I do what I can to help them make their job a little bit easier. So tonight I will be talking about possible ways to manage the stress. And my goal is not to teach you a bunch of strategies, because strategies are I will share some strategies, but strategies are only a Google search away. My biggest goal is to challenge you to reflect, and to reflect on what is going on with you, with your family, with your children, and to consider different perspectives, and as that may lead to different ways to manage your stress. So just a minute of introduction about my background. I talk about emotions a lot because I grew up as an anxious kid, and my parents were anxious. My dad was a highly sensitive person, HSP, which of course at the time nobody had heard of that term, and still many people haven't heard of it today, but it's as a highly sensitive person, he had a lot of sensory issues. Very kind, very smart, but his sensitivities created a lot of limitations in the family. So for example, he was very sensitive to noise. So if I played a little too happily, too joyfully, then I had to, I was told to tone it down, and he would become very frustrated, irritated if he was in a place outside where it was windy. He loved being outdoors, but did not like the wind. And so if a place became really windy, then we had to come home or get in the car, and then my mom on the other side was, she didn't have any sensory issues that I can think of, but she was very, very anxious. Again, very, very loving, but very anxious. And her anxiety created a lot of also limitations. And so what happened is that I became very aware. I became hyper aware of my parents' emotional states and my parents' well-being. And of course, as a kid, you don't really know what's happening, and you just absorb whatever is around you. And so what happened is that my parents' anxiety shaped me. And it shaped me in a way where I became really good, extremely good at tuning into other people's emotional states. And I became really good at noticing what helped people around me become comfortable, or what bothered them, and how to support them. So so that was the really good news. And what was great about that is that it helped me get really good in my work. And I gravitated toward working with people and working with children. And I used to work as an occupational therapist for over 30 years. That's how I got to meet Moira. And and on the flip side, what was not so good about growing up with anxious parents is that I didn't really, it took me a very long time to learn how to take care of my own emotions and of my own well-being. And so it led to often getting burnt out, and often not really understanding why I was burnt out or exhausted. And so it was a lifelong process of understanding through my own therapy, my own experiences, how I could take care of myself better, so that I could continue to take care of other people. And so in the process of working as an occupational therapist, I worked with children with autism, children with sensory processing difficulties, children with learning disabilities, Down syndrome. And in that process, I realized over the years that no matter how well I worked with the children, no matter how much progress they made, no one was really paying attention to the parents. And the parents I worked with were all stressed. It was a range, but it was from very stressed to extremely stressed. And no one was really talking about it. And the world of therapy for children is very much child focused, but it's often not family focused. So what would happen is that I would see a lot of the families that I worked with being just extremely burnt out, and no one was really addressing that piece. No one was asking, well, the questions that were asked was, has the therapy working for your child? But the question that was never asked was, how's the therapy working for the family? And so more and more, I felt that I wanted to do more. And I wanted to do more than just being what I was doing as an OT. And it was a wonderful career. But I wanted to do more with the parents. And I also started getting burnt out with some of the administrative parts of the job, the paperwork. And so long story short, I decided to repackage everything that I had learned and practiced about myself and as an OT. And I became a parent coach, a parent and life coach. And my focus has been to work with parents, to guide them for challenges they're going through themselves, or also to support their children, but through the parents. So that's the work that I'm doing today. And I think that's plenty of an introduction. So I want to share my screen, and let's see. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, all right. So the holidays are not stressful, expectations are. All right, let's take that in for a second. Because it could come across as, oh, so it's not my fault if I'm being stressed. So the point is not to create any blame or any shame, but is really to look at this concept of stressful holidays and how we manage stress. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through the first 3 slides. These are some of the main points that I want to make tonight. So as far as this concept of having expectations, I encourage you to reflect on what we believe that we should do. Because often we approach holidays with a certain level of expectations. We have expectations about what good holidays are, the way it should be, the things that we should cook, and the people we should spend holidays with, and the number of presents that we should buy, and all those things. And they all come from good, loving intentions. But sometimes what happens is,
Christian, you became muted accidentally as I was trying to let someone in.
Okay, all right. I thought, oh, I'm talking too much. They shut me out already. But so often when we have, it's all, we all grew up with a certain level of, with various beliefs and values from our upbringing, from our parents. And as children, we're not aware of the values and beliefs that we absorb, because as kids, we just live. But sometimes as adults, we have the opportunity to reflect on those values, on those beliefs and those expectations, and decide, well, are those expectations still serving us, or are they creating more stress? So tonight I invite you to look into this, not just now, but in the next days and weeks, and to really reflect on which expectations do you carry around the holidays. What do you feel you have to do in order to have good holidays? And they're the things that social media tell us. Social media show us pictures of the perfect holiday gatherings, the perfect gifts, the perfect home decorating, the perfect Christmas tree, the perfect, whatever the case is. And that can in itself create a lot of expectations. So you may have people in your circle, whether they're friends or coworkers or family members, who do things a certain way, and it all sounds wonderful, but maybe the first reaction is, oh, I'm not doing that. Maybe I should do this. Oh, they're doing it better than I am. Well, I invite you to really notice those reactions, those thoughts, because they could be creating stress that is not necessary. So the second point that I want to make is that stress is contagious. And can you guys hear me now?
Yes. So Christian, unfortunately, when somebody comes to check in and I go to click to let them in, somebody clicks to let them in before me, and then they disappear and I end up unmuting you. So okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I won't take it personally. And so what I mean by stress is contagious is that when parents are stressed, kids are stressed. And when kids are stressed, parents are stressed. So somehow we need to acknowledge the cycle, and we need to break the cycle. There's the usual approach is, when it comes to stress management, is to focus on the child's behavior and to focus on helping the child and doing everything we can to calm the child, because the belief is, well, once the child is calm, then everybody else will be calm in the household. And to some extent that is true, but what about the stress that you're experiencing as a parent that is not related to your child? The stress of working, there could be stress in your marriage. There could be stress with family members. There could be stress with financial stress. There could be all sorts of stress that are not related to your children. And the myth is that as adults, we have the power to hide our stress from others. And to a certain extent, it's possible, but there's always a little bit of our stress that comes out and that spills onto other people. And so if we are stressed, people around us will feel that stress. So some of it is inevitable, but my encouragement is to, through this talk tonight, to encourage you to look at your own stress level, and not in a way to blame yourself or shame yourself or make you feel guilty, but more looking at, what kind of stress are you experiencing, and You know, the old analogy of if you're in an airplane and the cabin pressure drops, the oxygen mask comes down, and who do you put the oxygen mask on? Not on your child. You put it on you first as an adult, because if as an adult something happens to you, the problem will be greater for your child. And so it's a lot of the same thing with stress. The next slide isn't stress normal? So, you know, I hear that a lot because stress is inevitable. We're always going to have disappointments and deadlines and all those sorts of things. But what happens, and that's my opinion, personal and professional, that we've become used to functioning with a very high level of stress, and to the point where we think it's inevitable, and we tend to dismiss it. We tend to dismiss the fact that we're really stressed. So on one hand, one of the things that we most talk about is how stressed we are. But on the other hand, we just push it away, and we tend to say, oh, well, yeah, that's horrible. I just getting headaches, can't sleep at night. I'm on edge. I'm having a hard time focusing at work. I'm having neck aches, stomach aches. But, oh, well, what can I do about it? So, and it's nobody's fault. It's the society, the world that we live in. And it's, you know, it's to the point where we're affected without even realizing that we're affected. So we can't change the way the world is operating, but we can take notice of how we're feeling, how much stress is affecting us, and start noticing, well, where, you know, how is it affecting us? Is it affecting us physically? Do we have physical symptoms from stress, insomnia or digestion issues or whatnot? Or do we have, you know, is it affecting us in our work, where we're having a hard time focusing or being motivated to do things? Or is it affecting us in, you know, is it affecting our mood and the way, you know, maybe the way you're becoming more irritable with you know, at work, with your children, and also the flip side of the question is, how is stress affecting your child? And because, you know, children have their own stress that could be coming from school, that could be coming from, you know, whatever the reason is. And so starting to notice, to not just accept that, oh, well, we're stressed, it's normal, but looking more at starting to unpack, starting to, you know, you've got this big bag that's called stress. So open the bag, put a flashlight on it, and start really looking at, well, what's in the bag? What is stressful, and how are you feeling? How's your child feeling it? You know, some children are so stressed that we think they have ADD. And I'm not saying that ADD doesn't exist. It very much exists. But if a child is extremely stressed or anxious, that will make it very difficult for them to focus. You know, they may become more irritable when playing with other kids. They may get into fights more. They may have problems sleeping. They may have nightmares. They may have, you know, digestion issues. Kids who are stressed at times or anxious have to use the bathroom a lot more, and they may be blamed for using the bathroom too often. So regardless of each family's situation, no matter how much stress there is that in my experience, there's always a little bit of wiggle room. And I'd love to know how wiggle room is translated in Spanish, but that's for another time. But there's always a little bit of space to move the needle, to change things a little bit. And often we fail at reducing our stress level because we think of all the things that stress us out, and we tend to see it as a big block of things. And then our next thought is, well, I can't change all of that, and then we give up. So what's important is to try to cut things, break things down, break the stress in tiny little portions, tiny little things, and look at every little things and see if there would be one way or another to make something a little bit better, a little bit different, because every small change is going to help you decrease a little bit of your stress level for you and for your family and for your children. So what can we do about all of this? Well, the first thing I want to encourage you to consider is to redefine your expectations. So as you know, during this presentation and then in the next few days, I want to encourage you to reflect on this and to have conversations with your spouse, if there's a spouse, with extended family, if you have extended family, you know, living with you, or not living with you, people who are you know, that you use for feedback, or that you spend the holidays with, and I really encourage you to have those conversations, and not necessarily immediately to solve the problem, but to say, hey, you know, are we stressed? Are we, you know, do we need to do so much? Do we need to do everything? Can we do things a little bit differently? Or what could we do differently? And I encourage you to identify the most stressful elements of, you know, what's in the upcoming holidays. What is it? Is it the big meal? Is it because you're usually hosting the dinner, or you hosting, you know, you're having people come over and you have to clean the house and you have to decorate the house and you have to cook and and just a lot of it is too much. Is it that? And even if you feel, well, but I can't change that, it's okay, but acknowledge it. Acknowledge what is causing the source of stress. And because maybe there's a way, again, to change a little piece of it. Maybe instead of cooking everything, somebody else can help you bring food and whatnot. And are there some traditions and expectations that are causing stress for you? You know, sometimes I have a lot of clients say, well, but I've been doing this my whole life. That's how my parents have been doing it their whole life. I can't change now. Well, my question is it absolutely true that you cannot change it? And is it serving you? Who is it serving? Is it serving your parents, or is it serving you? And is your guilt forcing you to do things that are stressing you out? Are you feeling guilty that you're not spending enough time with so-and-so? Are you feeling guilty that you're not buying enough gifts for your children? And are there boundaries that need to be set? You know, boundaries is always a hot topic when it comes to stress management, because boundaries are one of the highest forms of self-care. You know, when we say no to someone, we say yes to ourselves. Not in a selfish way, but there are at times some boundaries are negotiable. At times you may say, well, you know, it's not my preference, but I can do it. But there's a time where if something really stresses you out and stresses out your family over and over, it might be important to acknowledge that and set a boundary. And whatever the boundary is, you know, we're only going to do so many gifts per person this year, or we're not going to do any gifts. We're going to do something else, or we're not going to cook a bunch of different food. We're going to order in. We're going to have pizza on Christmas Day, and so whatever the situation is, or, you know, I've had families. It's not, you know, the holidays often have the theme of everybody's happy, everything is joyful, but when you start talking privately with people, and people who, you know, if people trust you, then often they'll share things that are not all happy, and they'll share that, you know, I don't want to be around my parents and my in-laws because they're mean to my kids. They don't understand my kids, and they're treating my kids in such a way that you know, it's not acceptable. Well, you know, I've had parents who've set boundaries with their own parents and their own in-laws, where they said, sorry, you're not coming over this year. So whatever it is, just start considering it. And the next slide is to look at challenging your stress level. So we tend, again, we tend to always focus on calming activities for the child. But what about the parent? What are the calming activities for you as parents? And it's not that you're more important than your child. It's not that, but you're just as important. And remember, if you don't feel like you deserve it, if you're feeling selfish about doing something for yourself, do it for your child. What I mean by that is that if you are less stressed, you will be more present for your child. You will be more emotionally available for your child. You won't be as tired. You won't be as irritable. You will have more time to just sit down and play and listen to silly little games. So my question, that I encourage you to focus on is what is going to help you to be calmer as a parent? And as soon as, you think, well, if my child didn't do X, Y, Z, if my child followed directions, that would be less stressful. I want to encourage you to think, well, what is something just within your control that you can do that would help you be a little bit calmer? Is this something that you can change in your daily routine? Is there something that you can do a little bit less of, or something that you can do a little more of? For some people, it's hard to be specifics because everyone is different and should be different. But it's for some people, it could be that they want to have a little bit of more quiet time. And, I work often with parents who are neurodivergent themselves and who have their own set of sensory issues, or often work with parents who are introverts and with children who are extroverts. And there's often a little bit of a clash of energy because the introvert parent becomes depleted faster than the extrovert parents. They need more downtime. They need more quiet time. And so if that's the case for you, it doesn't mean that overnight you'll be able to find hours of downtime and quiet time. But I've had parents who worked on the goal of creating 15 minutes of complete quiet time for themselves and every day. And it seemed ridiculously small, but when they went from nothing at all to feeling that they had that 15 minutes, it became like this really opportunity where they could do anything they wanted. Sometimes they just got on their phone for 15 minutes. And sometimes they just, read, or they just went for a walk for 15 minutes, whatever the case was. But so my encouragement to you is look for small changes. Look for anything as you're looking for activities that would help your child be calmer. Look for activities that could help you be calmer. And so let's see. The next slide is, embrace self-regulation for you and your child, because we really can't talk about stress without talking about self-regulation. Now, again, when I worked as an OT, every single session I had with a child focused on some aspects of self-regulation. And I always used to say, first regulate, then teach. Teach anything, whatever it needs to be taught. Social skills, empathy, homework, anything. If the child is not regulated, no information will be processed. There won't be any good learning taking place. So self-regulation is a state where our brain is somewhat calm but alert, and where we're paying attention and we can process the information that is coming our way, whatever information it is, visual information, verbal information, and whatever it is that we're doing, playing, running. If we're dysregulated, we can't really do those things well. And then, of course, the more dysregulation there is, the more behavior issues you have. And it goes from distractibility to complaining, to whining, to full tantrums and whatnot. So let's see if I'm going to get tuned off. Still good? Okay. So regulation is a big deal because, well, what's been interesting to me again is, like I shared in my introduction, is we always focus on how to help the child be better regulated, but we never focus on the parent level of regulation. And self-regulation is not a child thing. Self-regulation is a human thing. And that's how our brains operate. So if we have too much input coming, our brain becomes saturated. Our brain becomes overwhelmed, and we can no longer process what's happening. Or we process, but then we get distracted. We get headaches. We become irritable. We snap at people. We lose our patience, and we lose our motivation for doing things. So regulation is probably one of the most misunderstood pieces in child-parent relationships. And so I want to, the same way that if your child has been in any kind of therapy, you've probably heard the word regulation many times. It's probably been on your child's IEP goals for many times. And what I encourage you to start thinking about also is about your own state of regulation. And so what can help you and your child be better regulated? So I'm going to go over some general categories, and some may not apply to you. Some, my hope is that they will give you some ideas of, oh yeah, that causes dysregulation for me or for my child. And so make a note of it and start thinking about what's something that you could do to address that. So a big one for regulation is expectations. So as I mentioned tonight, I encourage you to revisit the amount of expectation you had for yourself and for your family around the holidays. I'm encouraging you to see if there's any wiggle room to decrease the amount of expectations, because the more expectations we have, the more stress we tend to get. That's just normal. So, we can try to be power, superhumans, super moms and super dads and super grandparents and say, oh, I can do it, bring it on. By the end, there's always a price that is paid for that. And the price is stress, and the price is anxiety, the price is insomnia, the price is worrying, the price is whatever it is. And so look at if there's any expectations that can be decreased. Another big one for regulation is the pace of things. So a fast pace tends to always create more stress. And in the same way that children who have sensory processing issues often do better when there is a slower pace, as humans, we tend to function the same. So if there's a really, really fast pace where you have to be in several places at the same time to organize your children's schedule and to pick them up and drive them places and to get groceries and do work and all those sorts of things, you are going to get stressed. So again, you don't have control over everything, but looking at what is it that you have control over, even if it's a small thing, and is there a way to slow down the pace? Uncertainty is another big one. So when we feel uncertain, we tend to worry more. If we're not sure of how something is going to go down, how, what's going to happen on such day at such time, or, the more uncertainty we have, the more we tend to worry. And some people are more prone to worrying than others, but so that's when a lot of those strategies in terms of bringing more structure can help. So the structure can be brought in terms of visual schedules, having a simple calendar of what's going to happen over the holidays, whether it's for a couple of weeks, whether it's for a specific day. It could be anything like, okay, on that day, this is what we're going to do as a family. On that day, we're going to, wrap presents, or on that day we're going to do XYZ, and having a, doing that advanced planning may seem like a chore. It may seem stressful in itself, but the beauty of advanced planning is that once it's done, it removes a lot of stress, because you know what happens. I was working with a family recently, and I introduced the idea of a whiteboard, and so they got this giant whiteboard. It's as big as the wall, and they put it up, and initially it was to help their daughter to transition better between activities by listing some activities that, okay, first we're going to do this, then we'll do that, then this. And but what happened is, after using it for a few days, the parents realized that it was helping their stress level, not just because the child was transitioning better, but because when their child said, oh, I want to do this, I want to do XYZ, distracted by something, the parents went back to the board and say, oh, well, let's see if that's on the board. Oh, that's not on the board. Yeah, first we need to do those things. And it just helped the parents to have a comeback, to have something to say, and to not spin their wheels about, oh, should we do this now? Should we give in now? Should we just do this later? Or it was already planned, and it was easier to make a decision, and it helped to decrease the stress level. So anything you can do to decrease the amount of uncertainty for your children and for yourself is most likely going to help. And I like to talk about the importance of having a competent role. Now, that tends to be more for children, but children do best when they feel competent, and children do best when they feel successful. So if your child, if you're cooking, if you're making cookies, and you tell me, well, yeah, my child is interested, they want to help, but they keep messing things up. They keep spilling everything, and they're not at the level where they can read a recipe, or they can't really, so I prefer not to have them involved, because it just creates so much stress. How can you help them be successful and feel competent? There's usually one tiny little step that, if you demonstrate it enough, if you guide them and you show them, you model it, they might be able to do it. It might be just emptying a cup of ingredients into a big bowl. It could be emptying the chocolate chips into a bowl, emptying the flour into a bowl, and you praise them for that. And then they feel competent, and they feel successful, and they start being more involved, and there's less behavior problems. So I encourage you to, and of course, not just for the holidays, for the entire rest of the year, but to look at how can you create a competent role for your child, during the holidays, during this time. Is there something that you can do where it will give them a job? Kids love to have a job, as long as they feel successful in it. And let's see, then we have, of course, we have movement and sensory activities. So I can see it's 7:14, so I have to wrap things up a little bit so that we make sure to have enough time for questions. Movement and sensory activities are huge, because they can help regulation. And so movement activities, what's been really hard especially last year with the pandemic, is that everybody was inside, and we moved a lot less. So, the less we move in natural ways, whether it's on the playground, running, walking, sports, whatever it is, the less we move, the more hyper we tend to get, which seems to not make any sense. But it's because our brain needs to have movement. So if we don't give our brain enough movement, it's going to look for it. And it's going to, we're going to be restless. We're going to be cranky. We're going to be irritable. We're going to be, so that movement is really, really huge for again, not just for the holidays, but to help our nervous systems to stay regulated. So you don't have to sign up your child for a marathon, but what is it that you can do in small bites to create a little more movement, and making sure that it's on the list of everything for the day, so that you can squeeze in a little bit more of physical activity. And of course, the encouragement is, what can you do as a parent? What kind of activity can you do that will help you self-regulate? Now, you may tell me, oh, I hate exercising. I don't exercise. I don't have time for exercise. Okay, is there something you can do that will help you, that you'll still feel good about? It could be lying down on the floor in your living room and rolling from side to side. You may not call that exercise, you may not call that yoga, but just that simple input of not being on your 2 feet or sitting down, but lying down, having more physical input through your entire body, and rolling might give you a little bit of input. Try it out. It'll feel weird. It'll feel good. And diet and sleep, of course, are hugely important. So, during the holidays, we tend to consume more sugar, which of course doesn't help our regulation, doesn't help behavior. But, so I'm not going to tell you don't eat your favorite desserts, because I'm going to be eating a lot of desserts, but I also know I'm going to pay the price for it, because that's I can only handle so much. But those are things that are part of regulation, that are part of that can contribute to stress. No one who's sleep deprived, or anyone who's sleep deprived, is going to feel more stressed, even if there's no actual stressful situation. But when we are sleep deprived, everything seems more difficult. So you may not be able to, because of your unique situation, you may not be able to get enough sleep. Most parents are sleep deprived. It's a reality. But looking at ways to, whether it's for your child or for yourself, to pay attention to that. So I've talked a lot, and I'd love to hear any questions, and hopefully I can answer them.